It began as an ordinary summer trip, the kind thousands of young Europeans take every year. A harmless getaway filled with warm beaches, cheap bars, loud music, and the illusion that nothing in the world could possibly go wrong. Yet somewhere along the line, something inside Lars Mittank shifted in a way that no one around him immediately recognized. A subtle change that started as a shadow on the periphery and then grew into a consuming force that would eventually swallow him whole and leave behind one of the most disturbing disappearance cases of the 21st century. Lars had always lived a quiet, structured life in northern Germany, where the routine was predictable, the seasons familiar, and the boundaries of safety rarely crossed. And to those who knew him, he was the last person anyone would associate with danger, paranoia, or the kind of psychological unraveling that spirals into tragedy. He worked steadily at a power plant, saved his money, loved football, spent weekends with his girlfriend, and maintained a lifestyle that could only be described as ordinary, in the most comforting sense of the word. That ordinariness made what followed all the more haunting, because it showed how someone grounded and stable could fall into a state of confusion and terror without any warning, collapsing into a void that escaped every logical explanation. The plan was simple. A short vacation to Varna, Bulgaria, with a group of close friends, a celebration of summer and youth, a typical escape from the monotony of work life. But even before the trip began, subtle cracks appeared, cracks so small that no one could have predicted the catastrophe they would ultimately lead to. He had hesitated before buying the tickets, as though something unnamed disturbed him, an instinctive discomfort that he couldn't put into words. Yet after some encouragement, he agreed and joined the group, unaware that this decision would become the threshold to his disappearance. The first days in Bulgaria were unremarkable, filled with football, beaches, and the usual nightlife. But somewhere among the bars and the blaring music, something shifted. A fight broke out near one of the seaside bars, a meaningless altercation between local men and outsiders, and Lars was caught in the middle of it. What happened next appears straightforward on paper. A blow to the side of the head, an injury to his ear, a ruptured eardrum. Nothing life-threatening, nothing that would explain the psychological spiral that followed. Yet in retrospect, this moment became the ignition point, the beginning of a change that deepened with every passing hour. Doctors examined his ear and warned him not to fly until he had recovered, recommending mild antibiotics and rest. And because of that, he stayed behind while his friends returned to Germany. This moment, the separation from the familiar, became the first major fracture in the story. Because Lars had always depended on structure and the security of routine. And suddenly, he was alone in a foreign country with an injury, medication, uncertainty, and a rising sense of dread he couldn't seem to shake. He checked into a cheap hotel near the airport, a place with thin walls, dim hallways, and a transitory atmosphere. The kind of space where travelers stayed only out of necessity, not comfort. For a man like Lars, it was the worst possible environment. The echoing footsteps, the indistinct voices behind other doors, the feeling of being far from home, and the endless hours of waiting. Something about that hotel seemed to unspool him further, deepening the unease that had already been growing since the incident at the bar. What happened during the night he stayed there remains one of the most disturbing unknowns in the case. Evidence suggests that something frightened him intensely, something that triggered a profound sense of danger that may not have had any real source at all. Yet for him, the fear was undeniable, visceral, consuming. He left the hotel abruptly, abandoning his belongings, moving with the urgency of someone being hunted. And he traveled to the airport medical office seeking help, though the precise nature of what he felt remains impossible to reconstruct. From that point on, the descent accelerated in ways that no one could fully comprehend. His behavior grew erratic, his movements became jumpy and restless, and the sense of fear surrounding him took on an almost physical presence. Witnesses later described him as agitated and overwhelmed, but their brief interactions couldn't reveal the inner storm driving him. The psychological rupture that seemed to widen with every passing moment. Video footage from Varna Airport captured the last known images of him. A young man walking with stiff urgency, scanning his surroundings with rapid, anxious movements, and suddenly breaking into a full sprint across the terminal, as though fleeing from a danger invisible to everyone else. He left behind his luggage, his documents, and everything that grounded him to his identity. Running through the sliding doors and into the open air in a state of sheer panic. What followed defied any attempt at interpretation. He sprinted across the airport parking lot, crossed a busy roadway, and headed toward a patch of forest near an abandoned construction site. Witnesses saw him climb a fence and disappear into dense vegetation, wrapping himself in the shadows of the trees, and after that moment, there was nothing. No tracks, no calls for help, no belongings left behind, no confirmed sightings. Only a sudden silence that swallowed him completely. The disappearance of Lars Mittank became more than a missing persons case. It became an obsession for investigators, internet communities, psychologists, and anyone drawn to unexplained mysteries. The notion that a healthy young man could dissolve into thin air within seconds seemed impossible. Yet that is exactly what appeared to have happened. And every attempt to make sense of it only produced more questions. What exactly triggered his fear? Was it the head injury, causing a rare neurological or psychological reaction? Was it the medication, known in rare cases to cause paranoia? Was there an external threat, someone truly following him, someone he couldn't escape? Or was this something deeper, a hidden vulnerability within his mind that cracked under the pressure of pain, isolation, and anxiety? The forest where he disappeared is not large, not remote, not the kind of place where someone can slip away forever. Yet extensive searches found nothing, not even a single piece of clothing or a footprint. The land itself refused to give up any clues, and the silence around the area only intensified the unease surrounding the case. It was as though the earth swallowed him, or as though he ran far beyond where anyone expected. Driven by a fear so overpowering, it allowed him to push his body past its limits. As time passed, theories multiplied. Some believed he suffered a sudden psychotic break triggered by the injury, leading him to flee blindly into the wilderness. Others insisted he encountered a real threat before he disappeared, a person or group that scared him enough to abandon everything familiar. A darker subset of theories suggested foul play, abduction, or even organ trafficking, though there is no evidence to support such claims. But beneath all of these theories lies the most unsettling possibility: that his fear was real to him, regardless of its cause, and that he ran until he could no longer run, disappearing into a place where no one has been able to find him. The case of Lars Mittank stands among the most chilling disappearances in modern Europe precisely because it occurred in broad daylight, on camera, in a populated area, under circumstances that should have made escape impossible. Yet somehow, he slipped away as though passing through a crack in reality.